Welcome into a two-headed version of the Three Wanks FPL podcast. As always, I'm your host, Luke, joined here by FPL Mac. We are not joined by our cone-wearing friend, Andrew Sharp, who should be donning the cone of shame this week. Low scorer, decided to skip out on the pod. If he's listening in, then yeah, can't really defend himself on that one.
It's a coward's move.
Coward's move, but here we are. We're here to talk Game Week 13. Quick turnaround before this Game Week 14 deadline, so that's part of the urgency to get this out. But this one kind of snuck up on me. This is the first midweek deadline of the season, and damn, yeah, at a completely inopportune time. Obviously, we're in the U.S. where Thanksgiving was just a thing, so suddenly we're flipping around. But kind of excited about it. I like when we start getting into the midweek stuff.
Yeah, I do too. I'm excited about it. It's easy to take your eye off the ball at this point in the season, I think, and just completely miss a game week, which I've definitely been guilty of in the past, but somehow caught this one. And yeah, it's a quick follow. Not too much time to celebrate the victory or wallow in the misery. Hopefully good things will happen, so I don't have to think about the bad game week if it happens to me tomorrow.
Yeah, and you're coming off the free hit, so you got that jump scare of seeing your real team come back into the fold.
Yes, I do. And then it's like, oh my gosh, there's new colors popping up for injuries and suspensions, and I'm like, maybe
Rainbow
bring
effect.
back the free hit team. Let's just keep that one.
Yeah, well, let's jump into that for a game week review real quick. Show your 13 team. Looking really good, but talk us through it.
Yeah. So pretty standard free hit. Might be, I don't even remember the one I flashed last week when I was previewing it, but it ended up pretty dramatically different. It was the biggest, I think, risk that I took was to double up in the Aston Villa defense, because defensively their numbers are pretty solid, but you just never know, and then it only takes a lucky goal or a pen to deny the clean sheet and lose a huge amount of points there. But that worked out pretty well. And then, honestly, solid returns from the defenders, like no clean sheets from Brentford or City, which was slightly annoying, but they both at least hit that 4-point floor. The only dog really was Munoz, who I brought in just as a cover. And I kind of regret that now, but that's mostly hindsight bias. There's a world where Munoz goes up and puts a couple on Man United because I think they're a fairly leaky defense. So
yeah, he definitely had his chances in that game. I think in general, he's a player where it feels like he should have more points than he does based on how attacking he is. But so far this season, he has not been worth the hype outside of a couple weeks ago.
Exactly. And so I brought him in as a 1-week punt, just as a free hit, high spend, a lot of money. If I hadn't brought him in, I probably would have played 5 in the midfield. So considering how successful this game week was for me, an overall rank of 1.75K, I'm not going to, a game week rank that is, I'm not going to pick too many holes in it. Woulda, shoulda, coulda, right? Yeah, there's a world where none of these guys scored. I'm looking at a 20-point free hit, so not gonna count my chickens after they've hatched.
And who was the auto sub that you had for Salah? Because obviously he's the one Liverpool pick that you would think wouldn't be benched, and for the first time this season, we see a Salah benching.
Yeah, when that lineup came out, I was terrified. It was Anderson, came on and got me 6 points, which was great. But I didn't really pick a free hit team with a deep bench. I was kind of like, oh, I don't really need care that much. All these guys will play, and then Salah gets dropped. I'm like, oh my god! If anyone else doesn't play, I have no one to sub in. So, yeah, that wasn't great. Middling performance in the midfield. It's a bummer because I was looking at Django Ouattara, and for Sade, and he obviously went off, but Sade was pretty involved. Can't fault myself there. And then Rodgers was just to have a Villa attacker. Their attack still isn't functioning at its highest capacity, so it's not too surprising that he blanked. But I think the fun stuff is the Foden and Thiago. Yeah. Thiago's continuing to just average a ridiculous amount of penalties, but he's actually doing okay outside of the penalties. But I mean, he's on 6 pens right now for this point in the season. And just as for some comparative stats in the Prem, Spurs got 3 the entire last season. So that's just a crazy amount of pens. I don't know if Brentford are doing to pens what Arsenal are doing to set pieces, but I mean, they're getting a penalty return, if that's what we want to call it, every week or twice a week at this point.
Yeah, insane. And this week, he was the one who drew the pen. So it is an interesting thing. We talked about this last week of almost is he a sell high candidate? Obviously doesn't look that way at the moment, scores 2. But yeah, is it just that this team is more likely to gain a pen? Is it that their players are instructed to stream into the box and, are just getting more pens in that sense? I'm not sure. But to your point, it seems that part of it seems unsustainable. That being said, yeah, he scores one from open play as well. And he just looks super involved. Like he's their main guy, and Brentford have looked just solid. So
Yeah.
not someone that you're dying to sell, that's for sure.
No, for sure. Definitely not dying to sell him. And I was watching that game. It was it was pretty funny because I watched about 80 minutes of it, and our missing compatriot was like, "All right, I'm turning this game off. This is so boring." And then everything started happening. So apparently he's the problem. But yeah, Thiago
Yeah.
had an offsides goal that was also there. So he was involved outside of just the penalties. He was
Right.
ruled off in the build-up. So I was happy to watch that game and lay eyes on him for the first time in a more studied way. Like I've
Right.
watched Brentford games this season, but this time I was watching him a lot.
Right.
And then I will say Collins was also very involved from a set piece perspective and a header perspective. He could have had at least one or two headed goals. So he's another one to watch with the Brentford fixture swing. And then the big guy, though, I want to talk about is Foden. I am a known Phil Foden hater for fantasy purposes only, but we signed a one week truce, and he got a ridiculous amount of points. It could not have worked out better because he's been going like 1-1-1-3-1-3 all season, and then somehow puts it together. So I'm not sure that my opinion's changed on him, and I'm eager to bring him in this season, but he certainly put it up. So solid week for me.
He's just a
Happy.
streaky player for sure. So I get the frustration, but I mean, now he's kind of putting himself in a position based on that performance to say, is this a player that we can trust long term? But we can get there. Just on the Thiago stuff as well, I think he reminds me of earlier season Semenyo, where it's like, okay, this player is obviously overperforming. They're performing at a level that's really, really high, and it's probably not sustainable, but they're still a buy. Like, you know what I mean? Even if he comes back down to earth and they stop getting a pen every week, he's still probably a good buy. This week going to Arsenal, but outside of that, I mean, Brentford's long-term fixtures are really, really, really nice. After this, they do Tottenham, Leeds, Wolves, Bournemouth, and then Tottenham again. So there's just no reason to not to buy him, at least after this week. You could probably hold off if you don't have him for one more. And there's definitely no reason to sell him. I'm in a situation where I have him and am like scared to bench him almost against Arsenal. The last time I did that against a good defense in Newcastle, he popped off. So yeah, interesting times.
Yeah.
All right, I will jump to Sharp's team really quick and cover this. Yeah, so obviously no Nick Pope in the Newcastle lineup. Somewhat of a surprise, somewhat not. Curious to me of whether he was dropped for form purposes. I know you had kind of heard some rumblings about that, or if he was dropped for injury purposes, right? So he had that concussion. I think what Howe is saying to the press is that it was injury related, but I'm not sure if that's just Eddie Howe playing mind games. And to the point, if you were hearing that it was form based and intentional and tactically based, then I really wonder. Regardless, Sharp is in a tough spot with that one and likely looking to have to make a transfer to get him out unless he can survive one more week. Gahey not doing the thing. Yellow card, I think, is what brought him down to 0 and then conceding. Dan Burn doing just fine in that Newcastle defense. I'm thinking he got an assist. Is that right?
I don't know. I unfortunately have no Newcastle defenders.
Yeah,
I was
got an
upset about
assist.
that one.
Yeah. So good day to be a Newcastle defender. Arsenal concede yet again. Minte, sorry, I have the opposite of the Midas touch, and as soon as I pick a player, they turn to shit. So no good on Minte. Gibbs White blanked, had some really solid chances, but blanked and then got pulled with a potential injury. It looks like he's going to be okay for the rest of the week. Semenyo with another blank. Want to talk about him in depth a little bit more. Bumo, another blank, Eze blank, and pulled a little bit early. And then Holland blank and Thiago obviously returning. So he had a rough one. Voltemade sitting on the bench here. I will say that benching is a little bit of a head scratcher to me, and I was thinking that earlier in the week, but you had to bench somebody, and it'd be hard to bench somebody like an Eze who came off a hat trick or Bumo who's been so good at United. So tough week for him, but he'll turn it around, I'm sure. But yeah, I wish I was looking at him in the cone right now. That would feel real nice.
It'd feel a lot better. I don't think we could have expected that Everton domination necessarily, but I agree that I probably would have started Walter.
Yeah.
But neither here nor there.
Yeah.
He's down in the cone where he belongs.
All right. Over to mine. Double Arsenal defense. Again, yeah, they conceded. Not really sure what to make of that. This is the risk that you run right now. And we talked about, do you have 2 Arsenal defenders? Do you have 0? Kind of looks like 0 at the moment. They have been conceding. And for somebody like Raya, the argument for keeping a goalie of that price is that he's going to keep so many consistent clean sheets. And again, Midas Touch so far has not. Senesi, they concede again quite a bit, and Senesi gets his 5th yellow and is suspended for next week. I think that'll put a lot of people in scramble mode. Not necessarily me. I have some bench cover, so I should be okay. But more discussion to be had about whether he's someone you want to be keeping long term. Chow, man, finally I get some luck on the defensive side of things, and this is absolutely some jam luck. 2 goals from a defender is always insane, but at the same time, I don't think I've had a defender score outside of Gabriel this season, so I'll take it. But yeah, anytime a defender scores, you're sitting on the luck box. I think I want to talk a little bit more about Newcastle later. Of even though he returned like this is a player for me that might be on the chopping block in the medium term. Let's see, Saka with an assist, and I think he got some bonus or something there as well. Actually, maybe not. Let's see. Saka got just the assist, looks like. Sar, God, he has done absolutely nothing for me. He gets subbed off with an injury before halftime. Bumo and Minte, Mateta, Holland, and Thiago. Mateta, I don't know if you saw this, but he got a pen called that really probably shouldn't have been called, no contact. He goes and takes the pen, double touches it, so his plant foot hits it, and then he kicks it and he scores. And they catch that on VAR. And then I would think that would mean, okay, just penalty over, no pen. They gave him another pen to retake it, and then he scored the pen. Mm-hmm. So odd return for him there. Obviously, that's like the 6 a.m. game for us, so hard for us to catch that. But that's a wild one. Have never seen that before for sure. But regardless, somebody who gets a lot of chances. And then Dewsbury Hall on my bench, again, kind of trolling me, not only for scoring, but also wiping the Newcastle clean sheet that would have put Chow into the stratosphere with like a 20-pointer. But hey, can't complain with 16 points from one guy.
Yeah, no, I mean, that Chow, I was watching that Chow game and just turned it off a couple minutes in. I was just like mad. I was like, I don't have any Newcastle defenders, and they're clearly going to destroy Everton in this. Interestingly enough, this is the second time this season that Everton have conceded 2 set-piece goals to the same person. So Chow got, I think, both of his goals off of set pieces against Everton, and that was interesting. And then on the Mateta thing, real quickly, before we jump too much into the games, that was a interesting thing. I hadn't seen that before prior to Atletico Madrid's Champions League game last year, pretty famous, where Julian Alvarez touches the ball, and it was a situation, like you said, where the pen was over, and people were really upset about that. And so they changed the rule this year to allow a retake if the plant touches. And then, sure enough, something I had never seen up until that point, I've seen twice in like 6 months. So pretty wild to see that pen. And I was bummed to like not have Mateta on my team for him to score that pen, but oh well, I came out on top. It's all right.
For sure. But I wonder about losing a player like Sar, what that does to a Palace attack. Obviously, they're starting to have a little bit more injury trouble and congested fixtures. I think also we've seen in recent weeks Mateta has been subbed early in some games. And so I worry going into this midweek fixture if somebody like an Nketiah who came on for Sar would sub for him. Alternatively, maybe Sar out guarantees more of his minutes. So it's unclear. For me personally, I don't think somebody I can really sell just because of the fixture. They're playing Burnley, and I have other fires to put out and only one transfer. But I wouldn't be too envious if I were you, because I think things are looking weird over at Palace for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I have him in my team, just for what it's worth. I just didn't have him in my free hit team.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not rushing to sell him because of the Burnley fixture, but I do think that he might be gone as soon as 16.
Yeah. Okay, so let's, I guess we can touch on that Newcastle Everton game. I know this might be a weird thing to say considering they beat this team 4-1, but I will say something just didn't look right here from Newcastle and hasn't really looked right. It felt like the first half here, these bars past the halftime whistle kind of look like, Newcastle just takes off. But in the first half, it really felt like Everton was doing very well in this game and keeping it pretty even. And it was a lot of just back and forth action. And from a team that you think of as, a top tier defense and as somebody who should be able to stifle a lot of opponents, yes, Everton are a lot better in the attack this year, but it just felt kind of basketball-y almost. And then in the second half, things kind of got away from Everton, but still Newcastle doesn't keep the clean. So from the perspective of honestly defense and attackers, I think it's been a tough go for Newcastle. And they don't look locked down. They look like they're giving up big chances. Everton are finding ways to create in this game. And then on the flip side of it, I feel like you're not getting huge chances for your attackers. That Voltemade goal was beautiful, something to watch, but a little bit of a misnomer, kind of gets into open space and is able to chip one over the keeper's head. But yeah, I don't know. I don't feel incredibly confident in this team going forward. Fixtures, again, do start to turn pretty nicely. So maybe it's worth just keeping the faith for a little bit. But I don't know. Just along the lines of somebody who's watching this team with a really critical eye, because I've owned their defensive assets for a while now, I'm not loving what I'm seeing. But hey, 4-1 victory. I have the defender who scored, so I can't be too upset. But I don't know. What are your thoughts on Newcastle or Everton?
Yeah, I don't know. I agree and I disagree. Like, I agree that the score positively it puts the result for Newcastle in a more favorable light than I think the performance
Right.
that I was watching dictated. I don't necessarily think that Newcastle should have won that game 1-4. In fact, Everton had some pretty solid chances a couple of times that I just think a team with higher quality opposition would have put away. But that's why Everton's a lower in the table team, is because they don't tend to put away those chances. If they did, they win more games and stuff.
Sure.
So I think the game reflected about what I'd expect, barring just how many goals Newcastle won by. I expected this to be kind of like a stodgy 1-1 performance, and it just wasn't.
Yeah.
That being said, I've been pretty high on Newcastle for a little while now, and I think that's just purely because their starting defense is coming back, and I think that is going to more positively benefit them. The attacking has been a little bit questionable because Alanga has 0 goals and Gordon has not had a lot of contributions, but Barnes is coming in and looking a little bit better. We're starting to see the defense come back in, and Alanga should have scored a minute in, so it looks like he's getting a little more involved. So I'm not entirely out on Newcastle. I'm not rushing to get them immediately, especially I think this week they play someone decent.
They're playing Tottenham.
Okay, so they're playing someone not decent. So I don't know. I'm not rushing to get them, but I think that the fixtures do turn, and that turn coincides with the turn for a bunch of players we might have, and I might just be picking one of them up within the next 2 weeks, anyways.
Yeah, I think tentatively my plan was to bring Mateta to Voltemade at some point. Mm-hmm. Welbeck's obviously putting his hand in the air as well, so we'll see which of those guys. But yeah, I mean he'll still be an option. Obviously, he finds the back of the net in this one, so definitely still really integral to what they're doing. I think I just have higher expectations for a team that you think of as, top 4, top 5 side, something like that. And but I could just be looking at them with a critical eye. On the Everton side of things, my boy KDH, I feel like I'm the in-house representative, but this week especially, he looked incredibly involved. The past couple weeks, really, he looked incredibly involved in the attack, and all season I've been drumming that and saying that he is, just for his price, somebody who's very involved in a decent Everton attack, right? He takes set pieces, he's on corners, he's involved in the attack. But in this last couple weeks, especially, it feels like there's a tactical shift to make him. He's pressing more. He's just higher up the pitch in general. And I really wonder if that has to do with just their lack of output from their strikers and feeling like they need a little bit more juice there. Regardless, if you're in a position like myself where you have Ismail Assar flagged on your bench or you need to get rid of an AFCON defender or anything like that, I think he's just a great pick. Somebody who they have pretty solid fixtures, and he is cheap is the main thing. So, and he's been returning, obviously. Fixtures are Bournemouth, Forest, Chelsea, Arsenal, Burnley, Forest, Brentford, Wolves. So long-term, they turn pretty solid. You do have that Chelsea, Arsenal in 16-17, but yeah, again, he's somebody that you can bench, you can play. It's either way.
Yeah, I also do want to add that I think what you're seeing with the eye test is reflected with the stats for KDH. Like, I pulled the numbers from game weeks 1 through 8 and compared them through game weeks 9 to 13. It's not exactly an even division, but the stats on the 9 to 13 in almost all categories for KDH are better.
Sure.
So I don't know if there's a tactical shift. I know that Beto should have scored like 10 goals in the beginning of the season.
Should have scored in this game.
Right.
Yeah.
Literally. And so I don't know if Moyes is finally just reading the writing on the wall and saying like, all right, some certain players just aren't maybe as reliable as we thought and shifting it elsewhere. But yeah, I was pretty determined to get off the Everton train a couple weeks ago, and now I'm not as much. I don't think that they're world beaters in any scenario, but I think that they have a lot of guys who are very reasonably priced who are returning, and I think that they're a great rotational team.
It will be interesting to see what they look like without somebody like an Ndai during AFCON, though. A lot of their creativity comes from the wings and him and Grealish. And in this game specifically, it was just Grealish over and over again, just sending in balls from the left and looking for players to return them. So maybe they become a little bit more of a one-trick pony without Ndai. Alternatively, maybe somebody like a Dewsbury Hall does even more. Who's to say? I think Tyler Dibbling will probably be the guy that comes in for Ndai. So we'll see what this team looks like over AFCON. But I think if you're looking to replace somebody in your midfield, he's kind of a cheap, no risk. You know what I mean? Like there's not a whole lot of risk in bringing in somebody that low level. Anyway, that is my weekly KDH speech, and we can jump into City Leeds. So yeah, your boy Foden scores twice. Hell yeah, great for the free hit. And City looked relatively dominant in this game. Give up the pen here, and that's the big jumper for Leeds. Unfortunate they're not able to keep the clean and let a couple of big chances go. But on the whole, from an attacking perspective, I think you have to like this out of City. I'm really curious because City's run is just so phenomenal for so long. Just to read that off really quick: Fulham, Sunderland, Palace, West Ham, Forest, Sunderland, Chelsea, Brighton. Like it's just lovely for a while. If there's any way I can get into another City player, I definitely want to, right? When we're getting topped off with those transfers in 16, that's somewhere I want to be looking. You have Vardiol scoring here. You have O'Reilly who nearly scored. He obviously gets the assist as well. And then a couple of Foden goals. Do you see this, kind of to our conversation at the beginning, do you see Foden as somebody here who popped off and looked a little streaky, or is this somebody who you can trust a little more? Do you feel like the pep roulette is just ever present and it's not worth investing anymore? I want you to tell me to buy a City player, but at the same time, this is not the period to invest in minutes risks. So I think I could see both sides of the coin, but curious to hear what you think on especially the Foden side.
Yeah, it's tricky because when I was looking at this free hit, I was looking a lot at the City guys, and I was between Foden, Doku, and Cherky.
Yeah.
Because Cherky's come back and he's a great player. The numbers say pick Foden, and that's why I did. Like all the stats were better, and that turned out to be a great decision. But what I don't, and the reason I'm a Foden hater for fantasy purposes only is just because, well, he's evidently a great player. He's not a very consistent one.
Right.
I think that sometimes he's guilty of doing what Verts does, where he maybe doesn't get the assist. He gets the assist to the assist,
Yeah.
right? And that doesn't directly translate to a point. Foden's only had 2 returns the entire season, so very lucky that one of them happened to be in my free hit. Doku actually has more returns and points. So to answer your question, I don't know. Oh, that's funny. Actually, they're tied on points, both with 48. I don't know. I still feel like it's the Erling Haaland team. I still feel like City has some questions in the defense that would prevent me from jumping on a Guardiola immediately, because he's 6 mil, right?
Yeah.
And so that's really expensive for a defender who's not even in the top 10 for points. And if you're conceding 2 to leads, although one is off of a penalty, that's a little concerning. So as good as the fixtures are, if they're not returning or if everything's being fed through Holland, it might just continue to be the Holland team. But I'm going to watch Foden over the next couple of weeks. If a Semenyo needs to go, or if we're freeing up cash from getting rid of a Bruno or a Sarr, I think he's a good pick. I'm super weary of his consistency.
Yeah, I think all of that is fair. I think we're getting into a period, I guess I'm speaking for myself, but also feel like this is probably a little bit of a meta shift. We're getting to a period where not only do we have a lot of transfers, but money doesn't seem like it's really been an issue for a lot of people. We're starting to see players like Thiago and Welbeck, who are cheap forwards, return. We're starting to see cheap midfielders return, kind of running out of high-priced options. We do have Palmer potentially coming back that we can touch on. But outside of that, Saka's returned a bit, but hasn't looked essential. Certainly a player you could feel like you could go without. Anyway, point saying, I think when you have some of these higher priced players like a Foden or Vardiol or an O'Reilly, it's not so much of something that should turn you away at the moment. I think Foden's inconsistency is super real. Potentially interested in the defenders. Yeah, they gave up 2 to lead, so I think that's the counter argument there. But yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. With the pricing standpoint, I don't think anybody is really. I mean, it's possible that a lot of people are struggling with money because they're invested in too many average priced guys in the midfield. But I don't think you should be dissuaded for picking some of these guys because they're priced, because there are so many cheap options that are returning. I'm just not entirely convinced by the City defense yet. They've only kept 3 clean sheets in the games that Gardeval's played. I guess what I'm most curious to know about for City is, when is Rodri returning, because I think that he's a Ballon d'Or winning CDM for a reason, and that he dramatically changes the risk profile of both owning their assets, but also the productivity of the offensive assets. So if he can come back soon, I think that we should definitely be jumping on them. I don't know when he's coming back.
Yeah, I'm looking at season-long XGC. City are still in second, but listen to this. Arsenal have conceded 7 goals and have conceded 7 XG all year. Next best, City, 14.2. Newcastle, 14.9. Chelsea, 15.5. Point being, there's not a huge difference between someone like a City and someone like a Palace, someone like even a Liverpool. They're all between 14 and 16 goals XGC. But Arsenal, holy fuck. Just makes me think maybe we've been unlucky the last couple of weeks, but
no, I think we have. But Arsenal are clearly on a different level. But everyone knows that.
Yes. Anyway, so solid defensively on the whole, but I think it's tough when we're talking about defenders and seeing them not keep cleans, because we're comparing them to the Arsenal defenders, and that's the problem. Is you're sitting here being like, why don't I have double, triple Arsenal defense? That whole thing. Well, that's a good transition into that game. Not for a game that should have had a lot of pomp and circumstance, didn't feel that way. Obviously, Chelsea get the red card. I'm not sure in what minute, but get the red card for Caicedo, which means that he'll be suspended going into next week. And Chelsea still found a way to return in this game and get a draw out of it. Not really encouraging in that sense from the Arsenal perspective. I think this is the same problem I've had with this team all year, is that they're elite defensively. They're on track to win the league. But when it comes to destroying an opponent, when capitalizing on an advantage they have against either a weaker team or, in this case, an undermanned team, they just they're too passive and methodical with their attack to be super relied upon. As somebody who owns a 10 million Saka, I start to get frustrated by this. Also, you just never know where the output is coming from. But yeah, I mean, good on Chelsea. I think this shows that they've started to kind of turn a corner. They've had a lot of inconsistency to start the year, despite some really nice fixtures. But this was a really solid performance out of them.
Yeah, I mean, if you can take one to Arsenal, who we know have been far and away the best defense, that's great. I think it can be true that Arsenal are a great team and that they are just so fucking boring to watch. I mean, the games aren't even fun when you watch them play.
No.
Like it's score a goal, shut up shop, do nothing, act like you're prime Mourinho parking the bus ball, and then we're just going to beat you because we're better at set pieces.
Right.
Like, I'd be curious to know how many goals Arsenal would have if they actually called set piece fouls in the Prem too, because I think it would seriously be like a third. But yeah, I mean, it's not none of those are clear digs at Arsenal, but they're not like
yeah. This is the Tottenham fan talking for sure.
Yeah, but they're not. It doesn't mean that Arsenal's a bad team. Everyone knows that they're great.
Sure.
I don't even think they have competition to win the Prem this year. So, barring a catastrophic injury return or run, I mean, seriously, they're going to sleepwalk into the Prem this year. Like people are trying to give it up to them when like City loses to Leeds. I was a little nervous about the Chelsea performance. Like Enzo should have scored a little bit earlier, I think, and he didn't convert it. But that Chalobah goal is only on 0.07 xg, so that's not a huge chance. But Chelsea have just kind of like been like that all season. Like I wouldn't say they've had a super high functioning attack, but we know they've had a lot of injuries. And what I think is really interesting for both of these teams is that I think some of the more important attacking players are on the precipice of return for both of them. So Cole Palmer came in for, I believe, 20 minutes in this game. So one to watch if he comes back, and maybe this return to form is just, or his dip in form that we've really been seeing since the end of the last season was just injury related. If he comes back and he had time to properly heal and rest, and he can come back and play well, that could be awesome. And then similarly, I believe Odegaard and Havertz are both primed for return for Arsenal, and I think Havertz really, really helps the team. I don't know if Odegaard's going to come in as immediately. I'm not an Arsenal fan, but Havertz at least is like the perfect striker. So if Havertz comes in, Arsenal might get even get better, because holy cow, they can start getting open play goals instead of just set piece goals. So interesting to see. One also funny thing I wanted to point out with this game is I was like, okay, I don't have any Chelsea players. I don't have any Arsenal players on my free hit. So I need a 1-1 game with someone that no one owns, like a Marino to score. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. I was like, what are the chances of that? Like I've bet against the Arsenal defense, which is an objectively stupid move, for 2 weeks in a row, and I've gotten rewarded for it. So I'm like, this is crazy.
I think the to your point though, somebody like a Marino or a Trossard scoring is like ingrained in my head as, if you see the notification pop up, I feel like that's always the anecdotal. Like, are you thinking it's Saka or Eze or whatever? Honestly, no. A lot of the times I am thinking it's Trossard. Funny enough, this season he's just been good for it. So seeing a player like Marino score is just, it is funny.
Yeah, it wiped out the Chelsea clean, so anyone who had that got punished. And I was like, all right, that was best case scenario. Lucky, gonna wipe my hands clean with that one, but works.
On Palmer, he's an interesting one because you'd think he will probably start next week or just get significant minutes. I think I'm in the position of feeling burned earlier in the year, needing to see him show me that he can be the Cole Palmer that's worth 10 million, to be honest. And I would bet you're in the same boat. The anti-argument there is, listen to these fixtures: Leeds, Bournemouth, who we've seen get shit kicked quite a bit on the defensive side of things, Everton, then they go to Newcastle, and then Villa. So things turn quickly, I suppose, but the next three are pretty phenomenal. I think Everton are a team that I like to target across the board. Leeds as well. It could be an option. Chelsea is not off the menu. I think we're at that point in the season where I kind of thought we were done with them and their fixtures were going to turn pretty hard. But we do have a nice little window here, especially with the ability to attack transfers, that it could be worth the thought. But how are you feeling about Cole Palmer?
Okay, so I think I lied. I don't think he actually played 20 minutes. I don't know why I thought he did. But he was at least on the bench, so that's good. Yeah, I think with Cold Palmer, it's a wait for him to start producing thing. I
Yeah,
mean, even with the dip in his form, you and I are talking about how expensive Saka is at 10 million. Cole Palmer, despite losing value, is still more expensive than Saka at 10.3. So it's going to take a pretty strong argument from him to convince me to get him. And I'm certainly not going to jump early on him. I
yeah,
don't feel the need to put more money into one questionable asset. I mean, especially a questionable asset who wasn't really performing well before his injury. We don't know how much of that was injury related, but it just doesn't feel. I mean, like if you jump on him early and then it works, great, good for you. But that's not my risk profile. I don't see
yeah,
myself doing that.
for sure. Along those lines, does it turn you off of a player like Enzo that he's, if not returning this week, close to it?
I think it does. Yes, positionally, Enzo tends to play much lower on the field when Power's in. Um, it it'll be interesting to see how Maresca plays Palmer because we've seen Maresca play two types of Palmer. One is where he lets him be very
Right.
free, and then Palmer's the guy. And the other way is where he doesn't let him, and he makes him play the way Maresca wants to play, which is just, oh God, in my opinion, this is the battle of the most boring teams to watch in the Prem. But if he takes the shackles off Palmer, it could be great. But if he doesn't, you're probably looking at a lot more 1-1s and just
Yeah.
maybe Palmer gets the occasional assist. But I'd be very surprised if he goes off and starts getting hat tricks immediately.
Yeah, 100%. Okay. Speaking of tactical changes that are interesting, let's talk Liverpool West Ham. Obviously, this is the first time we see Salah pulled. Liverpool, like, it's a weird one because they finally do what they needed to do, right? They finally dominate a bad team. Gakpo with a goal and an assist, huge returns from him from an FPL perspective, but from a team perspective, more importantly, they got the win and the clean, so that helps owners of Van Dijk. Begs the question: Is it time? Is it time to go with somebody here? Personally, I feel like I trust the lineups even less now. If Salah can get pulled out of the lineup, then anybody can. Not that we were hugely trusting them before. It maybe turns the tide on somebody like a Van Dijk. Again, their fixtures are really just that good going forward. So if they can put in performances like this against bad teams, then you would think that they should be able to keep some more cleans. So maybe the people who went there weren't completely in the wrong. Yeah, I don't know. How do you feel? Like, is there anyone in Liverpool that you'd be looking at? Just for a reminder, their fixtures are Sunderland, Leeds, Brighton, Tottenham, Wolves, Leeds. Just beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, I would obviously be looking at the ones that I think most people are aware of. Gakpo, potentially Isak if this scoring run starts to extend a little bit because Ekatike has a back injury, so we're probably looking at less rotation there. And then Van Dijk, Van Dizzy, just on the defense. But no, I don't. I mean, it's nice that they won. Good for Liverpool fans. We're further putting a buffer between ourselves and a mass suicide. But like, they have not been very consistent. Those chances that they scored are relatively low XG. Now I know that they're great players, and great players tend to put away that XG. I do think that Slot is lying through his teeth, though. I think that dropping Salah was a tactical decision. It could be prep for AFCON because the Egyptian coach has said that he wants him as early as December 14th for Nigeria friendly. So, I mean, Salah could miss almost the entirety of December. Like he could be gone within a week. But I don't necessarily think that's a problem for Liverpool because if he hasn't been performing and they just say, all right, we don't need to worry about playing
Right.
Salah anyways, we can just get some consistency, that might be good.
Yeah.
This game just unfortunately doesn't tell me anything more about Liverpool because West Ham are bad. So
Right.
sorry, you're something.
No, I was just going to say, I think, Salah being out then guarantees more players minutes, right? So in theory, it gives a little bit more guys more security.
If I was forced to jump on one of them right now, I would maybe look at Van Dijk. Like gun to my head, if I had to pick one, Van Dijk would be it. But I don't know, man. one win against West Ham does not make
Right.
it a return to form, right?
Right. 100%. I think the Gakpo one is interesting as well. I go back and forth on whether I'm tempted by a player like that because of exactly what we just talked about, the minutes risks. But I feel like we've been talking about him being a potential minutes risk all season. And yes, he's had the occasional come off the bench performance. He's played 45 once and 34 once and 60 once. Otherwise, he's played 90 every game. So it's hard for me to imagine him just suddenly getting dropped. But you're investing in Liverpool attack, which is definitely playing with fire. So yeah, heard on that one.
Yeah, I mean, I actually think that if they do opt to drop Salah, Gakpo minutes become more secure because then they're playing Verts on the right side.
Right.
I mean, do they have a backup right wing for Salah? Is it Verts? Is it Gakpo? Like, is there anyone who's actually in that role?
Well, so I mean, I think honestly, the best way to look at it is just the lineup they put out last week, because they just have so many options in attack that I think that's the most likely.
Yeah.
But behind him, I think they have that kid. I can't remember his name, but he's like 16.
Well, so there's Chiesa, but he's not really a starter for
I'm
Liverpool. It seems like Slot hates him. And then there's,
I'm thinking of Rio Ngumoa, that guy.
Yeah, I mean, that kid's sick.
So obviously this time around they elect to put Szoboszlai in that spot, but I think you could also argue that they do a 2-striker attack and Ekitike and Isak, something like that.
I think that Slot wants to play a striker. From watching him at Frankfurt, strikers have always done really well under his team, and I think that Salah being such a goal scorer puts Slot in a tough position, because it's like you can't not play Salah, but if Salah's not performing, maybe it's time to just make a courageous step and drop him. And no, Slot's been claiming that this is injuries. I still think he's just arresting him. I still think he's completely lying. But I don't know. I could see that if you could just give Liverpool a more direct path to goals and just say give every ball to Isak, and by the way, the wingers have to press now, they could get better. So I am watching them, but not jumping on them early.
Yeah, heard. I'm sorry. As we're talking, I'm tempting myself to get Gakpo. Neither here nor there. So let's move to Palace United. We talked about the Mateta goal. I don't think there's a whole lot here other than just Palace are a solid team. They don't keep it clean, but a United attack, you'd kind of expect that.
Yeah.
So I took us here. I don't really feel like there's a lot to say unless you have something.
No, I mean, I think the thing I will say is that Glasner is starting to publicly cry out for more players, and he's starting to get quite upset visibly and in the media about just the lack of squad depth. And that's something that everybody knew going into the season. That's something that I've been harping on all season. You guys didn't believe me, but we're starting to see more niggles and injuries pop up and stuff like that. And I said this last week, but I'm concerned about Palace, not because I think they're a bad team, not because I think that they have any bad players, but Sarr just got injured. He's been in and out. Richards went down with a little thing and ended up being fine. But that's just what happens to small squads with a lot of games. And these guys are going to have 8 games in the next 4 weeks. Yeah. So
I've been on your team. I've been singing your good praises, but do I have triple Palace at the moment?
Well, hey, so next do I. They're playing Burnley next week. I'm not fire sailing them this week, but I think that I'll probably own less Palace once we get those free AFCON transfers. 100%. And maybe it's the case that the wheels don't fall off, but the more likely scenario in my mind is that guys like Mateta just become when they have these short turnarounds, just become rotation risks. We can't have a striker who is somewhat inconsistent both in form and in minutes.
I think when you have somebody like this too, who's a rotation risk, I get worried about a game like this where you're like, oh, well, I can't sell him against Burnley, but that's also probably the most likely game where he'd get rotated. So
agreed.
I'm not hyped about that going into this week, but I also, again, for me, Sarr is the priority to get out potentially. Selling Mateta could work, but I have one transfer, so I'm in light territory in that sense, and I would assume most people are in the same boat of having spent a good amount of transfers recently to try to optimize.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I luckily don't have Sar, but I am a little worried about just the impact of Sar leaving that team
Yeah,
because Sar got injured game week 1. Mateta didn't return until Sar came back. Sar came back. Mateta started being the forward we all knew and loved, but it was I don't know. It's not like Sar puts up a crazy amount of XA like expected assists, but he's just fundamental part of how that offense functions.
sure.
So,
Yeah, just one more head to have to defend.
mhm.
Okay, let's jump to Forest and Brighton. Only thing I wanted to touch on here is that I guess this graph, now that I'm actually looking at this for the first time, isn't doing Forest a whole lot of favors. I know that Sharp has Gibbs White, but it feels like Forest is kind of back to being like a serviceable team. Feels like things have smoothed out for them there, and they don't keep the clean. I would be curious to look at their DEFCON numbers from this game, but players on your mind would be a Morgan Gibbs White, would be an Elliot Anderson, would be potentially what's his name, Igor Jesus, their striker.
Yep.
So just food for thought in that sense. Let's see, what are their fixtures over the next few?
They play Wolves, Everton, Spurs, Fulham, City.
Yeah, so
Everton, Villa, West Ham. So good
pretty
fixtures.
pretty solid run. Again, I think the same thing that we talked about in the preseason with this team of like all the appeal of some of their players, maybe a little less defensively at the current moment, but I could see that turning a corner. For me, a player that's jumping out just because of a lack of other options really is an Elliot Anderson. On set pieces, has some attacking threat, and is the highest DEFCON earner in the game. So definitely an option, similar to the Dewsbury Hall, but in a different light of just a good player for their price. So that's an option to be thinking about in the long term. But I mean, I'm not in love with Forest. I just am back to being like, okay, they're not disastrous. They're not West Ham 2.0.
Yeah, I mean, Dyche has been playing Forest well. I prepared a graphic this week, a graphic of my own, where these are the per 90 stats for Forest since Dyche took over. And I mean, in basically every category, they're doing significantly better. Now, a lot of this is probably watered down a little bit because the team under Ange was so bad that they weren't doing good in
Right.
anything. But I mean, just from when Dyche took over, they're scoring more goals, they're getting more assists. From a fantasy perspective, they're getting a lot more points. They are actually doing slightly worse on clean sheets, which is not what I typically expect over a Dyche ball, but they're conceding less goals. Oh, no, sorry, excuse me. They're doing better on clean sheets and they're
Yeah.
conceding less goals. So in most of the categories I care about, they're doing better. I don't think that the Forest. I don't think that the ceiling of Forest is this season is like back to Europe,
No.
and a lot of their players are a little more expensive because they did so well last season. So Anderson is a guy I'm looking at. Morgan Gibbs White is a guy I'm also looking at, but he tends to be a little bit more of a defensive number 10 because he's just got a super high work rate, great at running around, super respectable quality, but doesn't translate to a lot of fantasy points. So I don't know. I'd like to see a little more out of their defense, but I am definitely looking at an Anderson just because he's cheap and gets those def cons, and a 4-point floor isn't bad for a midfielder.
Yeah. Yeah, he just doesn't. I'm going back and forth in my own head right now because it's, yes, everything you just said is true, and you can use the money somewhere else, but he's just a boring ass pick. He's just not exciting.
Yeah, but if you're looking at a fifth man on the bench, boring aspect is okay with me.
Yeah, especially in this, like, the other thing to remember, I suppose, is that we're going into this period where you just want players who are going to play.
Yeah, it's minutes.
And if he's a 4-point consistent DEFCON monster, then that's perfectly fine in this time period.
Mm-hmm. What I will say, and this is complete rumor, so I don't take a lot of stock in this type of thing, is that there has been reports that teams like City are interested in him and might sign him as soon as January. Forest has been pretty clear that they won't sell him in January, I think. So I don't think that actually will happen. But if he goes to City, I mean, I doubt he'll play as consistently because it takes a while for players to bet in. So that's not a reason to prevent you from getting him. It's just something to watch if you're thinking about him over the next couple weeks.
I'm not sure how much say he has in that under Marinakis ball, but
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
he's locked into the England squad, right? Like he's not going to lose his place.
Well,
Because
I don't know, because if he goes to City and doesn't play, he probably could lose his spot. So I think it would, if I was him, I would wait to the summer. Forest
yeah,
is clear that they're not going to sell him anyways. I don't really think it will happen, but
but
it's
it's
one to
something
watch
to think
because
about.
the window will open at the end of December.
Yeah. Okay. So looking ahead to this week, some of the Rob T graphics here of clean sheet odds and goals. Just looking at like where you would go if you were going to invest somewhere. Obviously, Liverpool are here, likely to score a lot of goals. Really high on the clean sheet percent as well this week. So somebody like a Van Dijk, somebody potentially like a Gakpo or an Isak. United also looking really good. I know. I think something we haven't talked about in a long time is captaincy. And I don't really feel like Holland versus Fulham is the time to go against him. But I think returns wise, it does beg the question. Last few weeks, he hasn't done a whole lot, hasn't scored return in the last two, has just been a little bit quieter as of late, but he's still Holland. I think I'm still going to go with him against Fulham because it's just I trust him too much. I also don't really trust the alternatives. But if you were looking at one, you could argue for a Liverpool attacker. You could argue for a United attacker, someone who's quietly been ticking along, or not so quietly, depending on where you're listening, is Bruno. And then on the Arsenal side, pick your poison. Some people would say Saka. As an owner, I wouldn't. But
Yeah, I mean, I think the reason that it's Holland for me every week is not because it's the boring choice or because it's the safe one or to hedge my bets against other players. It's just simply that he's one of the few players this season that has the opportunity to return in a big way going forward. It's a lot of these players could score, but when Bruno returns, it's typically just a goal, or when Saka
or
returns,
like an
it's
assist,
typically
yeah.
just a goal or an assist. Versus Holland has the potential to go off for two or three, which is generally what you want to see in a captain. I agree his returns have been down, but the counter argument to all the teams is you just listed is basically inconsistency with all of those other teams, Liverpool, United, or Arsenal. Even though they are putting up goals, they're also coming from a very mixed array of players. We don't know if they're one talisman necessarily, and those guys are just as likely to blank, if not more, than Holland on a weekly basis.
Yeah. Yeah, the Bruno continues to be a frustration. Scores two assists this weekend for 11 points, but balances that out with. I mean, he's the DefCon guy, but
Mm-hmm.
before that, you have returns of 2, 5, 5, 4, 8, 3, and then -1, which is back when I owned him.
Yeah.
So he's just the same.
I mean,
But
Boom has been entirely disappointing for me to own, so I kind of wish I just stuck with Bruno versus swapping them up over the course of a couple weeks. But woulda, coulda, shoulda. He's still not that convincing.
yeah, especially because we have AFCON coming up, and
Mm-hmm.
in theory, Bruno just gets better from that. We'll see, but
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm curious to see if that's something where they. Yeah, no, honestly, I could see him just staying where he's at positionally, but I could also see it being that you put, assuming Sesko comes back, you put him back at striker and you do dueling tens of Cunha and Bruno, and then have, I don't know who they'd throw in at 8 though. So yeah, maybe we haven't seen this team without Bumo yet. He's played every minute of every game, so it'll be really interesting to see how that tactic change comes from Amron.
Mm-hmm. And he's arguably Bumo is arguably their most important player going forward. So that alone is going to cause a disruption. Now, AFCON could be as short as a week for Bumo.
Yeah,
Probably
true.
not, but whenever you have disruption in a period of heavy fixture congestion, I always get a little worried. So
yeah, and the only positive is that for United, the fixtures are the least congested, just because they're not involved in Europe, so they should be okay.
Yeah.
But their upcoming fixtures, regardless. Forget about AFCON for a second. Like if you were somebody who was looking at getting a Bruno, it's West Ham, Wolves, Bournemouth, who suddenly, I guess I didn't really touch on this, but suddenly is a team that I'm like, I really want to target. In this Brentford game, they let up almost 3xG, and they've been doing that pretty consistently of allowing just a ton of chances. I know as a Senesi owner. But anyway, West Ham, Wolves, Bournemouth, and again, then they jump into that Villa, Newcastle for a couple of games. But then back into Wolves, Leeds, Burnley. So on the whole, some pretty nice fixtures over the long term here. So could be worth investing more highly in that attack. I
Yeah.
still don't want any piece of the defense, but
How are you feeling about playing your Chow versus Spurs?
tell me if, I mean, obviously I'll defer to you on the Spurs side of the things, but I'm totally fine with that. I feel like Spurs have not been someone to scare me off from the attacking perspective over the last few weeks. It seems like they're just a team that doesn't have a lot of options when whatever their strategy is for the week for how to attack doesn't work. It doesn't feel like they have a lot of alternatives. So it seems like they're relatively easy to shut down. On the flip side of it, talking about Newcastle and talking about how they just haven't looked incredibly solid defensively, that's something that's on my mind, but I think I'm fine to play him this week. Definitely not my biggest concern. I think I'm more concerned about players like Minte versus Villa or Thiago versus Arsenal. So yeah, I'm happy to sub him in for a week and kick that issue down the line. But if you tell me something different about Spurs, I'll definitely listen.
Nope, I got nothing different to say. I think that Spurs have been abysmal. They're not putting up a lot going forward, and I think that this is probably one of the ones where the fixture tickers are giving Spurs more credit than they deserve. They've been putting up really low XG, absolutely bombing, and they haven't won one in their last 4 in the Prem. So things are not good at Spurs. I can tell you it's pretty toxic from within the fan base right now, and we rallied a little bit in our 5-3 loss to PSG and then proceeded to lose to Fulham. So it's almost getting to the point where it's more likely that they sack Thomas Frank than not. I just don't think that they have a good replacement lined up. But yeah, I mean they're just trying to cross the ball in. There's no real outlet right now. So I would definitely go for Spurs. And I agree that, probably few people own Spurs assets right now.
Yeah.
That's good. If you do somehow still own Spurs assets, I recommend selling them. And I think we are getting to the question you've been asking for a couple weeks now, Luke. Are Spurs a target fixture? And I think they are.
Yeah. I think from the defensive side more so than the attacking side. Like, I don't feel like they're incredibly leaky. I just think I'm comfortable to start a defender against them.
Yes.
And famous last words, but that's where I'd be at.
No, I mean, it's a lot. It's just this tale of two stories where there's not a lot of energy or a lot of quality in the more experienced players. And then when they play the kids make dumb mistakes. And, so Spurs are just going to be inconsistent for a while, I think.
And talking transfer plans, like looking at this graphic helps me realize how many players that I do want, but don't have the outlet to get to at the moment. Because of injuries and AFCON transfers and suspensions and the whole 9 yards, there's just a lot of, and that's kind of what this period is expected to be: congested fixtures, injuries, putting out fires left, right, and center. We've kind of passed the time of being able to make these big wholesale changes. Obviously in 16, you have that opportunity. Whether or not you want to save those transfers and try to roll them through is another meta argument that I think we should probably have at a later date. But looking at some of these, like having some sort of city defender and or city attacker, same with Liverpool, I think both of those are relatively similar in terms of risk, is something that appeals to me. Getting somebody like a Bruno from United, but I don't know why I do this to myself. I feel like the Bruno thing, I'm always grass is greener. Like, I don't have him and I'm like, damn, I should really get Bruno. Then I have him and I'm like, how the fuck do I get rid of this guy? I hate this dude.
I think he's unfortunately just a guy who chips away at points because of these, as we said, time and time again. At the beginning of the season, he's just got a lot of routes, right? So maybe 1 week he doesn't score and he gets DEFCONs. Maybe the next week he gets DEFCONs. It's his 4th game this season where he's gotten 11 DEFCONs, been just 1 shy. So that's really frustrating for all of us Bruno owners. I'm not one of them, but I was for a couple of those at the beginning of the season. I agree, though, with your general sentiment. We should definitely talk a little more about AFCON plans soon. But my overarching thing is, well, I said I was going to be really aggressive in this period. I'm also trying to pick players at this point, only 2 weeks out, who are not going to require a transfer
right
after we get those AFCON things, because I think it would be, I mean, it's not silly that everyone play your own game, but in my mind, I don't want to have to transfer them and then transfer them out immediately afterwards.
Right.
So if I lock in, I have Caicedo as a little bit of a spoiler, and I'm looking to get rid of him. I'm trying to look to get rid of him for players who I think I will be playing post those AFCON transfers as well.
Yeah, I think the only other player that I don't have that is worth talking about, I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, is Semenyo. I think he's in in case. He's struggled in recent weeks. I think similar to the conversation we were having with Thiago, he's fallen off a bit, and somewhat expectedly, but somewhat unexpectedly. It's just the pendulum has really swung. But in this game, you also saw the goal that was scored, he should have assisted on. It went off the bar. Went off the bar for Evan Nielsen, and then whoever cleaned it up. It is what it is. He doesn't get the assist. Obviously, as a non-owner, that works for me. But somebody that could turn up in form at any moment, and their fixtures are decent going forward. So somebody else who, again, I would like to own him. I don't feel like you have to own him. And I'm sure that if I was talking to somebody who did, on the flip side of it, obviously you do, they'd be like, oh, I'm thinking about selling him. So I think it could be either way with him. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if it's the Evan Nielsen thing coming back and him being the issue, or if it's just kind of a downturn in form and obviously coming back from an injury, that type of stuff. But yeah, he's somebody else who's on my mind of, especially as a non-owner, because of how high his ownership is. It's really a thought process of like any return just smacks me. So anyway.
I mean, I agree. He's not been putting up huge numbers. We knew at the beginning of the season he was overperforming, and he seems to have regressed. There's no point of speculating about it. I just think that for a lot of people, he's probably just a luxury transfer, both in and out, right? Like, I have him at bigger fires to put out, and therefore I'm not really looking at him. I think a lot of people might be looking at him because the fixtures are good, but again, probably have bigger fires. And I don't know. He's like performing like a mid pick.
Right.
He's
priced super high.
Yeah, and he's like a mid, but at the same time, he's like a mid priority for me, and I suspect a lot of people. Like, I don't mind holding on to him, I guess is the short of it. I'm not super eager to get rid of him either, just because I think that, Bournemouth don't have Europe, as that starts to catch up to some other teams, and as they have some injury returns, things might get better. And, if they don't, he still has Burnley in 17, so I'm willing to probably keep him through that, to be honest. But we'll see, I guess. We're just going to have to watch him versus Everton. If there's another week with a no return, I'm looking a little more seriously at it. It's just not my priority this week.
For sure. And I think, again, I think of Everton as a nice matchup for attackers. But yeah, to your point, that color is completely painted on. If he doesn't return, then you're looking down the barrel of Chelsea and United, which aren't terrific fixtures.
Yeah.
So yeah, I hear you on that. But I think as a non-owner, seeing him go to Everton, I'm like, oh, damn, I really don't want to not have that. Anyway, do you want to jump into your transfer plans?
Yeah, let's do it. Share my screen, I suppose. So do we know what Sharp's doing this week while I'm pulling it up?
So, yes, he's got Nick Pope. I think he said he's making likely a keeper transfer, but hasn't honed in on that yet. He said likely Verbruggen. It feels like, oh my God, what a rough time to be looking at a new keeper, because a couple weeks ago, I had talked to you guys about maybe even bringing in Petrovic from Bournemouth. Thank God I didn't do that, because they've been conceding goals left, right, and center. Obviously, I ended up bringing in Raya. He hasn't kept any cleans. Pope's out. I don't know who you'd get. Like, Pickford isn't what he used to be in terms of Everton isn't this super defensive team. Sunderland are turning the corner. So if you had a Royce and you were doing well with that, that's probably over. So I really don't know who you'd be going for. And I suppose, yeah, Brighton kept a clean versus Forest this week. Maybe they're started to look a little bit more solid defensively, but that's also just not a team that I really trust. So I don't know. Maybe he's along the right lines of just going cheap, somebody who's a 4.5, and you're like, screw it. But outside, like, I think Raya will probably, the ship will right with him. So I'm not super worried as an owner, but if I was buying new, I don't know if I would go there. So that is tricky.
No, I mean, I don't actually agree with you. This is why I've had Raya the entire time, right? Because these teams that are mid go through these patches and it's like great, but I haven't had to waste a transfer on a goalie since 6, right? And Raya has kept a clean sheet in damn near every one of those games ever since then, right? Like, I transferred him in 6 and I had 1, 2, 3, 4, like 4 out of 7 returns, which is pretty solid for a goalkeeper. I'm not sure if there's many goalkeepers that can say that. And I'm parking the bus on Raya. Dubravka's my cheap enabler on the off chance that he gets benched somehow, which I just don't see. And then when the clean sheets start returning, I will have an Arsenal defender.
Yeah. I would say go for like a Martinez from Villa, but their fixtures aren't even solid. So yeah, I think fortunately or unfortunately, it points you in the direction of Raya, no
Yeah,
matter
I
where you
mean, I
are.
think you can play the goalie game if you're passionate about it, if you're interested and you're fine burning transfers on goalies as the fixtures swing.
Right.
It's just I'm not, and I never have been, and I tend to get the same keeper and sit on them and not look at my goalie too much. Or if I have two 4.5s, I'll rotate them. But there's just never a situation where I feel like the value is super huge to
Yeah.
get a goalie. And if I reset this real quickly, if we look at goalkeepers, Raya 58 points. Obviously, Gabriel and is at 81, so his differential is a little bit higher. And so I am, 15 points ish back on a Timber owner or the Calafiore, but I'm only, at this point, 5 points back on a Calafiore owner. So if you were lucky enough to have Gabriel and Timber skilled enough and not Raya, that maybe was helpful at the end of the beginning of the season, but someone gets injured, Raya keeps playing. I love having him. That's all I'm saying. I don't
Yeah.
feel bad about it.
From Sharp's perspective, I'd be curious to hear what his rationale is if he was here, because Brighton have Villa, West Ham, Liverpool, Sunderland, Arsenal, and that doesn't sound great to me.
Yeah, and I also just don't think Brighton are a very strong team defensively. Like, there's been
Yeah,
nothing to indicate that. I mean, it's for Verbuggin, as our boy so aptly calls him.
I think maybe the thought process is that they rotate nicely ish.
Yeah,
So in the week that Brighton play Liverpool, Burnley play Fulham, and then in the week that Brighton play Arsenal, Burnley play Everton. So not ideal, but I guess if you wanted to just say, hey, go cheap and spend the money elsewhere, I don't hate that. I hear what you're saying. If I was in those shoes, obviously I was in those shoes 2 weeks ago and I went Raya. The only other like semi-premium alternative that I actually think could look nice would be Donnarumma.
yeah.
They have pretty good long-term fixtures, and there certainly City is no Arsenal defense, but I could see the appeal if you wanted to go there. If you
I
couldn't
mean,
afford
the
Raya or
thing
something,
is, the thing is with goalkeepers is their number one route to points is clean sheets.
right?
Therefore, in my mind, I want the goalkeeper who has the highest likelihood of going for clean sheets. And if that's not Raya, I think you just need to take a look to see who you think that's going to be over the next couple weeks. My concern is that there's just not a lot of teams that are keeping a lot of clean sheets. We
No,
thought it was Bournemouth for a little while, but they've fallen off. City still ship one or two every week. Liverpool still ship one or two every week. Chelsea get red cards like it's nobody's business. It's crazy. So I don't know. Goalkeeper is not the most important position. I wouldn't stress about it too much. If you can rotate it, sure. But I mean, Brighton only have 3 clean sheets all season.
yeah,
Who are you rotating that with? Dubravka. Burnley have 2. So even
yeah.
if it's a rotation option, how good of a rotation option is it? And I don't know. I think it's easier to get into a Raya now because we don't have Gabriel. I understood the argument when the whole backline was healthy for Arsenal, but now I think it's actually boosting his case.
Well, and Sharp's already on. Oh, that might be his problem. That's why he can't get Raya, is because he's got triple Arsenal already. So he'd have to make the double move in order to get a new keeper. So I
Yeah.
think he's on one transfer. He's got Saliba, which is another problem potentially, and Timber, and then Eze. So he's not able to get directly to Raya. Not to mention potentially the cost is an issue. So I think if you're in a situation like that, I understand going someone different. But I do agree with you on the whole. Like if you had a wild card team, like it's Raya, and it's not really a question.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway,
No, and I think there's probably more people who are in Sharp situation where they have 3 Arsenal defenders. I'm the
right,
weird one who hasn't, and
right,
so far I haven't been punished against that. But they are playing Brentford this week, so
right.
you know, neither here nor there. All right, so for transfer plans, I think I have a pretty obvious 2 problems this week. If I just go to my pick team real quickly, it would probably look something like this. So Tarkowski versus Bournemouth, which I'm neutral about. Raya Brentford, Richards Burnley, Anderson City, LaCroix Burnley. So I brought in LaCroix ahead of my free hit to play him against Wolves, free hit against United in 13,
Mm-hmm.
and then play him against Burnley. I will probably be dumping one of the 2 of these out for a chow next week.
Whoa.
Whether or not I do it this week or not is TBD, but that could also be a Senesi. We'll just have to see.
Yeah.
But I'm not planning on keeping the double Palace defense for a long time, especially because their fixtures do turn a little bit.
Okay.
It's just if I want to rotate one of them out, it's hard to rotate two of them out. It means I'm basically forced to play at least one of them every week. But we'll get there in later weeks. Soccer versus Brentford, I'm fine. Minta versus Villa, I don't actually expect good things. Like that's not a game that screams a lot of returns to me. Villa have been pretty decent defensively. Bumo versus West Ham is obviously great. I'd love for him to remember how to play soccer again, though. Ever since I brought him in, he just hasn't returned. And then Semenyo. So, like, a lot of questions, but I also feel like I have a lot of players that a lot of other people have. The two biggest transfers for me to focus on are this Caicedo suspension and the Senesi suspension. I think my priority this week has to be the Caicedo transfer because he's suspended for 3 games and his value is just going to plummet.
Got it.
Because anybody who
Crazy.
has him is...
By the way, can we just talk about? I don't get that at all. Like, I'm sure there's the bylaw about him being studs up or some shit that makes that 3 games. But if you watch that tackle live, like that is, I play pickup soccer and that shit happens 3 times a game. Like I don't know what that was crazy to me.
I mean, it is like a studs up kind of thing, but it wasn't even like it was.
He wasn't like sliding and his studs weren't up in his knee or something like that. Like he looked like he went into the tackle, mistimed it slightly. Player's foot was a little further forward than he anticipated. Like I genuinely don't even think it was intentional. He stepped on his foot. Like that's what happened. It wasn't like he studs up, went into his, like I think the Anthony Gordon one made so much sense to me where he slid in and caught a guy in the knee. Like that looked
like reckless challenge.
Yeah. But this one I was surprised it was a red card period, let alone a 3-game suspension. But
yeah, I mean, I think this one's technically because it's above the ankle, and you could argue that it was reckless. But I mean, I've seen him make worse tackles this season that didn't get a card. Now I'm not sure that doesn't say that he shouldn't have gotten a card in this instance. Maybe this was the correct call, and he should have also gotten a card in those other ones. But 3 games out, I can't have him, right? Especially bummed because he was going to play Leeds and Bournemouth and Everton in those 3.
Yeah.
And then the fixtures turned. So I was hoping to not have to worry about him until I got those AFCON transfers, but kind of forced the issue. So I think that the obvious play for me here is to deal with one of Caicedo or Senesi. I just think Caicedo for me has to be the higher priority because of the 3-game suspension and the fact that his price is just going to start dropping. I mean, I got him for an original price of very low. I mean, I've had him since game week 6, so I've gotten a ton of team value, and it might just be time to say goodbye. That leaves me with 6.2 for a transfer. If I look at the available, I'll filter this out a little bit.
We're in basically the same boat then. That's what I'm getting from this.
If I look at the basic and affordable midfielders, the only guy I can really go for without taking a hit, who I think I actually want to go for, is Mr. Boring. It's Anderson. So I think this is my pick. I think this is what I'm doing this week. I want to hear your thoughts on that, but
you can't afford Declan Rice. I saw that him listed too.
No, I have 6.2 and he's 7. So I could afford him if I were to take a hit. I just don't know if I need to this week.
No, I can't really argue with you there. I was thinking of going the same spot. I don't like it. Like I'm not excited about it. But again, this is probably the time to be making boring transfers if you're going to.
Yeah, I mean, so my thinking on Anderson is like I said earlier, he's not only a boring transfer, but he's a boring transfer with some winnable games coming up, and he's my 5th man on the bench. And sometimes if I can just lock in a 5th man for a period of like 10 games where I'm comfortable playing him in most of them, that's good enough. Like there's the occasional fixture in here that I wouldn't want to play him to, like City and Arsenal in 22, but Arsenal's 8 games away, and if push comes to shove, I'm fine playing him in every other game, including City, even if that means he just is a DEFCON magnet. Because it's not that punishing for a midfielder to concede a goal. And if he plays 90 minutes and DEFCONs, yeah, that's pretty solid. I think that's what happened in this Brighton game. Even though they lost by 2, he got 2 bonus points. He got DEFCONs and he got the minutes played points, and that's 6 points. So it seems like a low floor pick.
Yeah, I think not necessarily trying to dissuade you from going Anderson. Like I said, I'm also looking at it, so I'm not against it. The alternative would be a Dewsbury Hall. Reason I say, I think he has better attacking threat. They're very similar players in a funny way because they're both on corners. They're both relatively cheap. And I would argue that Dewsbury Hall has a little bit more attacking threat, but a little bit less DEFCON. That being said, he has achieved DEFCON in the last 3 games. So with 14, 13, and 10 DEFCONs respectively. So whether that's a trend or a blip is hard to say. Fixtures are, I would say, similar to the Anderson ones. Anyway, it's really a tomato. They're very, very, very similar. I think you could go either way. But yeah, if I were you, it'd probably be between those two. And for me personally, I would probably go Dewsbury Hall. But I also know that you've been riding the Everton train probably more than you'd like to.
Oh, it's Dewsbury Hall. I always thought it was Shrewsbury. Just watching me try to type that out for 10 minutes. No, I don't disagree with anything you're saying. To be honest, I hadn't even considered him. So
Yeah.
looking at him a little
He's
bit
a
now.
look. He's a look for sure. And just again, like, go back and watch this week's highlights. And I mean, it's been true for the last few games, but he is so involved in their attack. Like, he
No,
is
I
so
agree.
threatening.
I was watching him and he's really great. He's a good player. I am a little worried about his underlying statistics, just in the sense that like some of these games he's returned on has not gotten good
Yeah.
numbers. Like this United game where he got 13 points, he was 0.08 xg and 0.01 xa. And a little bit better versus Newcastle, but that was much more of an open game. So
Yeah, I need to go watch that goal against United again because
yeah, it was pretty low. So I don't know. I actually don't hate that. I might need to look at
I would
the
I would dig deeper into each one of them. I think I really do think it's a coin flip because they have. If I look at the fixture ticker for the next 8, Forest are in 4th, and Everton are in 8th, right? So it's relatively similar in that sense. Again, attacking threat versus DEFCON. Like with Anderson, you're relatively confident that he's going to DEFCON every week. Obviously, he kind of cucked everybody for the first few weeks, but he'll probably come back on that. He's been a little bit more consistent now. So yeah, I think either way. I think Everton's attack is probably a little bit more threatening, but who knows what they look like come a few weeks from now. Forest, that is, they could be a little different. So
yeah.
Either way.
No, I'm actually just pulling up KDH's his like last 5 matches versus Anderson's just to see. I maybe I'll tweet about it versus subjecting everybody to this live, but I agree. I am a little bit worried about just how Everton's going to deal with Ndai. He's so important to them.
I think that's real.
But
I think you're in a similar meta perspective to where I'm at with this transfer, where it's kind of less than ideal to be making this right now because your options are so limited. You're looking at like a Dewsbury Hall or an Anderson that you may not actually want. It's what if I had 2 transfers, what I would love to do, obviously I don't have Semenyo in your case, but would be to downgrade Asaka and then upgrade the mid that is out, as well as, so bring in 2 like mid-priced mids as opposed to just going to a substandard sub-6 mid. So obviously it's probably not worth that for a hit, especially when Saka is about to go play Brentford, but it does tempt me to maybe roll just so that I could do that next week for free. Obviously with the prices you mentioned, like I'm in the same boat. I think SAR will go down. Somebody like an Anderson will probably go up. So it probably benefits us to go for it right now. I would want somebody better if it was really up to me. So I think there's an argument to be made there to roll as well.
No, I don't disagree, because one of the problems that I have is that I agree that if I had 2 transfers this week, it would be a lot better, because then I could take out Asaka, bring in
and
a
next week he goes and plays Villa, who've been pretty solid defensively as of late.
Then I could bring in a Bruno, who's been great, someone I'm eyeing on. He plays Bournemouth in 14. And then, I could bring in an Arsenal defender. I could make that call and get rid of Senesi this week and bring in an Arsenal defender, or make the call to get rid of a Tarkowski this week and bring in an Arsenal defender. Like, Tarkowski's got to go. His fixtures are bad. I don't want him on defense. I don't think Everton clean enough. So
when are you planning this Palace defender out? Is that one of your 16 transfers? Or
it's one of my 16 transfers. Okay. Yeah. I brought him in. I'm going to, because I mean, next week they play Fulham. So I'm fine rolling the dice on that one. So yeah, I don't know. I agree. I don't love the Anderson pick. I think it's a whoever I decide to land on, KDH or Anderson, it's a safe pick for the long term. But
Yeah.
I think there's a lot higher value if I were to just drop Saka down and do literally anything else with that money.
I think the flip side of it is we're getting 5 transfers in 16. You know you're going to have to get rid of an Mbumo. I'm in the same boat. So maybe that gives you the opportunity. You know, you can get rid of that guy and restructure then. I think that's the beauty of it, is it's a mini wild card essentially. You can kind of make big structural changes. I just am disappointed in Saka, and I never intended to own him this long, and he's just been fine. Really frustrating when you watch some of his teammates outscore him and know that you can't get to them in one move because of him.
I thought that holding on to him when I brought him in was going to allow me to make easy moves, but because there's so many, just everybody this year is mid, that it requires a little bit more effort to move out of people, or there's just been other fire drills that I've had to fight, like injuries and suspensions, like this week. Like 2 weeks ago, I had an entirely different plan that didn't involve what my team is now,
Right.
So I expected to be out of Tarkowski already. I expected to be out of Saka already, have some different players.
Right.
The biggest threat to my team before I end this is just that I am really nervous about not having a more impactful Arsenal defender, and I can't really get one without taking a hit. I have 5.2 in the bank, and there's
okay. So then, no, that does open you up to. Last week we didn't touch on this when I think it was FPL Hippie came in here and talked about it. But this week you have Nkapia play and Mascara play. So you have two. I guess that maybe they're still out of your price range, but it's still worth talking about. We have two cheaper price Arsenal defense. Yeah, look up Mascara too. Two cheaper price brutal Arsenal defenders that potentially could be starting. Sounds like Saliba could be back tomorrow or whenever it is they play in the next couple of days. So maybe it's not a great pick there, but it is just interesting. Like we saw Nkapia come in for Gabriel regardless. So he's definitely an option. The question is for how long, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when you finally have a cheap-ish route into that defense, I guess seeing that they're 5.4, what is Calafiore, like 5.6?
Oh no, he's way up there. I think he's hit 6 a while ago. Reset those filters. It's 5.8. It's not bad.
Yeah, maybe I like it. At that point, it's probably just worth it to go with somebody like him.
Yeah,
because if you're 5.4 to 5.8 is not that different. So yeah, I hear your problem, but that may be, I guess, looking at their next few, right? So you would be going against them for Brentford and Villa, which admittedly are pretty solid. Yeah, I see the struggle.
Yeah, it's really just dependent on what. I don't like to look at these things in isolation. Like I can look at Anderson this week, but what I know for a fact right now is that transferring out Caicedo this week gives me an easy path to transfer out one of my defenders next week for somebody, because I'm getting a little bit more money back into the bank. So if I make this Anderson transfer, I'll have $1 million in the bank. And if I decide that, or even if I go to KDH, I'll have a ton more. Right. If I decide that Senesi needs to go, I can take him up to someone fairly decent, fairly quickly, like an O'Reilly. If I decide that, okay, LaCroix, your time was nice, or I'm keeping LaCroix and dumping Richards, I have a fairly good amount of money to spend on a replacement like a Chow or an O'Reilly. So I think that looking at it in isolation is not going to be my move. And what I would need to see is a hit going to get me more points this week? Are there two moves that allow a better move next week and allow me to use less transfers in 16? Or is one move and a patient strategy of one move this week, one move next week, one move in 16 going to be better overall for my team? And so what I'm really going to have to do is just hop into Plan FPL after we get off this and just look at the next 3 weeks and see, like, who am I forced to start? Who am I sacrificing on? And who are my threats in these next 2 or 3 weeks if I choose not to do this transfer?
I'm
give you a lot to think about there.
No, I'm thinking. I'm really wondering if it's worth the hit right now, because now I'm seeing the vision. Because you could do, if you did Dewsbury Hall instead of Anderson, can you afford Senesi up to an Arsenal defender? Because I honestly think that could be worth the hit.
Drewsbury Hall out, Senesi up to like
Timber, whoever.
Problem is Timber's so goddamn expensive.
Oh yeah, you're still 3 off. Okay, so do Calafiore. Yeah. Yeah. So like, okay, pitch for this would be that Calafiore versus a Tarkowski, who's who you would probably start in his place this weekend, right? Is that what you said, or whoever you were going to play as your third defender?
Anderson versus City, because Senesi's suspended.
Okay, so even more so. So either one of those guys, whoever you play, is probably not going to keep clean. You're not expecting that. And maybe in either of their case, the benefit of those guys is that they get DEFCON, so that's worth factoring in. But if you're confident that an Arsenal turns around and is able to keep it clean, like that's your 4 points made up for itself right there, right then, like immediately in 1 week, and that's not including the long term there. So
yeah, I mean, we can take a. I don't want to take up too much more time. We've talked a long time about me having one transfer. I'm impressed actually, but so my original plan was just if we do it in a little more of a plan view, I'll bring in Anderson. So I bring in Anderson. That leaves me next week with Senesi will be back.
Yep.
Right. So that's I still don't know if I'd want to play him. So Anderson I'd be comfortable playing against Chelsea, maybe not Senesi, or I could play Tarkowski versus a Forest if I wanted cover. So I think that this week is fine. If I just do that Anderson transfer.
But if you had an Arsenal defender, you'd play him right then and there. Like it wouldn't be a question. If Senesi's sitting on your bench / is somebody that you're looking to transfer out anyway, then you're factoring in as well the cost of that transfer.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm looking to transfer out Senesi though, because I think that I could cover these 2 weeks fairly well with the existing bench that I have. But I don't disagree with your point. I almost feel like it would be better to, if I were to make a hit transfer, get rid of one of my Palace guys because they go Fulham City, or just to bite the bullet on Tarkowski because he goes Chelsea Arsenal.
But the Palace guys, like you wouldn't want to take a hit on. You don't need to take a hit on them right now, right?
Yeah.
Your plan was to do that in 16, which is exactly when their fixtures turn. So like, I don't think there's any reason to priority move a guy out. The priority would be, hey, I'm starting Anderson versus City this week.
Yeah.
That's or Tarkowski versus Bournemouth, whichever one you choose. Like,
so who are we talking about hitting for? We're saying instead of Anderson, we'll take. Are we still keeping Caicedo, or are we just getting rid of Anderson?
So it would just be Senesi to an Arsenal defender, and then it would be Caicedo to whoever cheap mid you want, Dewsbury Hall, or I think that's where you have to go because Anderson might be too expensive.
Yeah, let's see. We'll just drop in Anderson, see what I have, but I don't think it's that much. I think it's 0.9 in the bank. And you could take Senesi up to.
I don't think the hit's worth it unless it's an Arsenal defender, to be straight. Like I think that's the only team that you can trust to keep a clean sheet at that likelihood that it'd be worth it. Maybe an O'Reilly, maybe.
Yeah, it's weird because if I could actually just play Semenyo versus City, but I don't want to play Thiago versus Arsenal really. So that
was something else I was going to ask you.
So, all right, I take out. I guess the question is, if I take the hit, am I playing both players, right? So if I bring out Caicedo and I bring in Dewsbury Hall, who I cannot believe you have me seriously looking at, that's crazy. And then I bring out Senesi for, an Arsenal player.
Calafiore.
It's got to be Calafiore. Okay, sure. So this is the bench, which I'm fine with.
I honestly would be starting Dewsbury Hall. The only reason I say it, probably over Minte or there you go.
I agree with that. So that's not a bad team. I do that. I have money, and then we go into 15. And I mean, it does change the complexion a little bit. You'd probably look at starting Calafiore versus someone. It's just that
Anderson probably, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I won't really need Anderson for the next 2, and then I have Calafiore for Wolves and Everton. So it's not a bad move. Taking a hit could be good. It just might be a question of, if this is a low upside week, am I ending myself up in the cone because I took a hit because nobody's getting any points anyways?
Well, let's see. What does it say? Arsenal, damn near 50% clean sheet odds.
Right. Well, So I'm a little more open to this. I guess the problem is I don't want a Calafiore. I want a Timber, but I can't afford a Timber.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
I'm a little more nervous about bringing in a Drewsbury Hall because even though he's looked good, I just trust in Anderson more. But the biggest fear that I have this week is just that I'm wildly exposed to the fact that I have very little in the way of Arsenal defense. And well, there's a lot of upside because I have the double in Richards and LaCroix. I'm still either forced to play Tarkowski versus Bournemouth or Anderson versus City, neither of which I
Yeah.
want to do. So
I do think the Dewsbury Hall versus Anderson is pretty slim margins. Like I don't think that's too different over the long haul. It may be that with Dewsbury Hall you get a 12-pointer and a 2-pointer, and with Anderson you get a 4-pointer and an 8-pointer. So I think that's the difference in those two. And in which case, really the argument for me for the hit has nothing to do with either of those two guys. It's about the Arsenal defense and how consistent they're going to be at keeping cleans over the next couple. But I mean, I'm no skin off my apple, whichever way you go. It's more so just along the lines of if you knew that Arsenal was going to keep it clean for 100% certainty this week, then it'd already pay itself off, right? Like you would make that hit for sure because you're getting a free clean. And they're as close to a lock as you'll ever get in FPL, probably, for a clean sheet. Obviously, they haven't kept it in the last two, so worth noting. But yeah, it's an option. I'm not no skin off my apple either way. And if you're really set on the Anderson over Dewsbury Hall thing, then that's enough reason to not go there. I think the bigger question is more so though around just like, are you willing to take on the double Arsenal defense stuff long term?
Yeah. What I really need to
I
do is I'm
guess.
just gonna have to look at 16 and be like, all right, in 16, who has to go? Because I have LaCroix and Richards, and so I mean, it is nice because if I do this hit and then in 15 I have another transfer and then I can still get rid of one of LaCroix or Richards for a Chow, which has been my entire plan. Because if I get rid of LaCroix in 15 and bring in, oh, you interesting. I didn't realize you did that. And I bring in Chow, then he's playing Burnley. So that's been my plan. So I like it. Enough about me though. Let's get on to you. I'm gonna just do some research.
No, I think mine will be pretty quick
We're
because it's
having
pretty much the same
conversation. We
exactly.
just had most of it for my team.
Yeah, exactly. Can you see this?
Yep, looks good.
Maybe I'll zoom out a little bit. Yeah, so honestly, my biggest dilemma, so same thing in the sense of really my options are differences that I do have the double Arsenal defense, so I'm not worried about that per se. Tricky part is, so I should probably get rid of Sarr, right? He's somebody who is close to a price fall. Someone like an Anderson, who's my leading candidate to replace him, but I'm not super excited about it. That would just make sense, right? Just get it out of the way. Sarr is not projected to come back anytime soon. Plus, he's going to leave for AFCON anyway, so just get rid of him. But again, the flip side is if I roll a week, I might be able to make a better change that I like more. Like go to, let's say, Saka to Gakpo and Sarr to Semenyo, something like that. I have, let's see, how much do I have in the bank? I have 0.7 in the bank. So when I get rid of Sarr, I actually have quite a bit left, a little bit more than you in the sense of being able to get a mid that is
you can bring
affordable.
In Rice. No, you can't bring in Rice because
can't bring in Rice. That's the problem. I actually would love to. Like I think I've gotten over my hatred there and my blinding hatred of getting in a non-premium Arsenal attacker. But yeah, don't really have the option to go to somebody like that. So I just looked through this list and Dye I got rid of last week. He's going to AFCON. There's nobody who I really like. I guess I could look at Dango Ouattara, but bringing in someone versus Arsenal.
I'm not sure you bring him in at least until 16. I mean, I expect the problem is he's just inconsistent. He's got better attacking numbers than Sade, but like worse minutes. I think he tends to get subbed sometimes. Because if you go look at his history, he's getting subbed fairly frequently, and that's my problem. That's why I didn't go him on free hit, because I said, this week I want somebody who's going to play. And Sade should have had a connection with Thiago, so that sucked because I was like, damn, I could have been a triple return. Rodgers, as someone who just had him in the free hit, his goals versus Leeds were really low XG. I was
Yeah, yeah,
looking at
yeah.
him, and like I know Villa are starting to function better, but they're not great.
Sobo, I don't think I'm sold on.
I
I
don't think
just
I'm
can't.
sold on.
I can't get myself to do
So
it. So
you're looking at Anderson? Is that your guy?
that's pretty much my guy. But that's what I'm saying. Like, really, it's either I'm looking at Anderson or I'm looking to roll, because rolling would then allow me to get somebody who I really want. But Anderson, to all the points that you've made about him and that we've talked about, is just a strong, consistent pick. You know, he's gonna get def cons every week. He has the outlets for attacking returns, and if they continue to improve as a team, then he'll be more and more involved. So I don't like hate him as a pick. He's very uninspiring. Also, if I get him though, I do have a ton of money in the bank, and I start to just be kind of rolling it like 2 million in the bank to sit here and do whatever I want. Again, this is where I'm like, oh, but then I only have one transfer the next week. So,
So can I ask you a question?
mm,
Why the focus on Anderson? Why not look at Bruno G, who's the third highest scoring midfield?
I honestly haven't looked at Bruno
So
G at
he's
all.
up there, he's in third, and he's not that much more expensive. And you've already said that money's not a problem.
Yeah.
I mean, the reason I bring that up is because in my situation, I'm looking at transferring my fifth attacker for a fifth attacker, like, or my fifth midfielder for another fifth midfielder, right? So whether that's KDH or whether that's Anderson, they're still my lowest guy on the totem pole, leaving you the fairly nice spread of money in my midfield with Saka, Minte, Mbumo, and Semenyo. Mbumo's going to have to go soon, probably up to a Bruno based on the
Mm-hmm.
United fixtures, but if you bring in an Anderson, all of a sudden you have two guys sub 6 and another guy
Right.
sub
Yeah.
and another guy at 6.1 only because the prices rise. So I don't like if Anderson in my mind is a fifth attacker, right? I don't
Right.
know if you need to bring in someone quite as cheap as him. You're not in the same situation where I
Right.
am.
Yeah. Literally the only, like, it's the thought process of going with him was looking through this and going, I guess he's the best of this group. I don't really love anyone here. I guess Kudus is another one, but
No, he's
Jesus
not.
Christ, never mind.
Don't look
Yeah.
at him.
So that's interesting. I think Bruno and maybe the other one would be a Doku, but I didn't realize.
Bruno's
I mean,
way
Bruno
more
Guimaraes has
consistent.
been, just putting up solid numbers for a while
The
now.
the thing is with the Newcastle midfield, it is genuinely, in my opinion, the best part of their team. From
Yeah.
like their midfield is great. He gets decent defcons. He's very involved in the attack, and the Newcastle fixtures are turning in a pretty great way. Like they're ranked some of the highest on the fixture tickers, out to like 20, if I recall, from my free hit research a couple of days ago. So I mean, if you look at the fixtures, he's playing Spurs, he's playing Sunderland. He is Burnley, Chelsea, United, Burnley, Crystal Palace, Leeds, Wolves. Like I think he could just be someone you could grab and sit on, and then as the meta shifts around him, at least he's got good fixtures as opposed to an Anderson where you're playing three rotation picks basically as your
Yeah.
starting midfield. I don't
No,
know.
I've never really thought of him as an attacking option. And I'm trying to decipher right now if, like, okay, so we're through 12 games out of the 38 game season, so about a third of the way through. So he's about on pace for the same XGI as he had last year. In that time, he had 5 goals, 6 assists. He has 3 goals, 4 assists. So maybe he's slightly overperforming, but I think the difference is in defcons. Like now he's getting 9.3 defcons a game. He's just got a little bit higher of a floor.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I like it. I'm not opposed. I will. That's a good thought. Because yeah, the easy thing right now is just to replace somebody like an Ismail Sarr and just get it done. And he's certainly somebody that's within my price range, so that one
Yeah,
makes sense.
I mean, if I just think about where Sar is in your sort of midfield hierarchy, he's supposed to be 3 for you. So you're trading, if you get rid of Sar for an Anderson, it looks like you're trading like a 3 for a 5 or a 3 for a
Right.
4,
Right.
bumping Minte up to your starting guy. And Minte has some good
Inconsistency.
fixtures every other game, but he's also just kind of inconsistent. So it seems to me
Right.
like your priority isn't downgrading because money's not an issue and there's no one you want. It's more of like what's the thing I can do to most impact my team in this position. Now,
Right.
if you think that is tossing a bunch of money elsewhere in the team, then it could make sense to downgrade. I just don't know if that's what you need to do necessarily this week.
No, honestly, I agree with you because long term, that's not the structure I want, right?
Yeah.
I don't want 3 cheaper priced guys. And it kind of puts me in a position to have to transfer either Dewsbury Hall, Minte, or whoever this guy ends up being up to somebody more expensive in a couple weeks. So I honestly think you're right. Yeah, I think you're right. I don't like. I think the problem is that there's no one. If I just had a little more, I would honestly just go Gakpo and go for somebody who's a little bit more of a flyer and it's just a little bit more fun, and there's more upside too. But to your point, like having somebody who's just a consistent, stable guy in the middle there isn't.
Well, if you're not concerned about rolling and taking a little bit of a price hit, then maybe it's just as simple as, I mean, who does Mbumo play next week?
Wolves.
Okay, so that one's tough because you're going to want him. I was saying to say you could jump early and get rid of
Right.
him, but
Right.
I mean, you could
It
maybe
would be
it's as
Saka,
simple
probably.
as taking Saka out if you roll this week because you know Saka comes out, then you have 2 moves, then you
Right.
can grab a Rice who's Rice as a. I don't know if I'd grab Eze. I'm a little worried about Odegaard coming back from an Eze standpoint. Although
I could do Rice and
you do Rice and
Semenyo
Bruno,
or
you could do
something.
Rice and Semenyo. You have
Yeah.
more information. Rice and Fernandez, like that could.
I could even do like
It's a Rice and Fernandez double up against Wolves, or excuse me, it's a Fernandez and Mbumo double up against Wolves as well. You could do Bruno and Fernandez, Bruno and Rice.
I could even do like a if we wanted him back, like a Palmer.
Because what I need to do is I need to improve my defense. Your defense is actually quite solid,
right?
So you're looking to improve your midfield, and
Right.
therefore I think that transferring in Anderson is just not accomplishing.
It's kicking it, yeah, it's kicking it down the line. And I think Thiago is somebody who I want to hold long term, probably. Mateta is somebody who I do eventually want to get rid of, but not yet. Probably in the next couple of weeks, which will also afford me more money to yet again invest in the midfield.
Exactly, and Mateta is so much more expensive than all of the other playing forwards that you're realistically going to transfer in over the next couple of weeks.
Right.
That he's a 1-to-1 anyways because it's most certainly a downgrade. Like the only forward that is more expensive than him is like a Gyökeres, who I'm not convinced about, an Ekitike, who I'm not convinced about, or a Watkins, who I'm not convinced about. So you're almost assuredly able to solve the Mateta problem in one move.
Yeah, okay. So I think what you're saying and what I'm taking away from it is either spend the money today on somebody who is similar structure-wise to SAR, right? Similar quality to SAR, and just stick with that structure. Upgrade somebody else later, do that thing, or roll it and significantly upgrade the structure next week. Obviously, with the caveat of taking a probable price hit. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. The last thing I want to say though this week is that you brought it up earlier that this might be a week where if we know Mateta's tired and he's playing an awful Burnley, he gets rotated. So this becomes the point where it's time to start improving our benches a little bit, and I'm just a little worried about having. This is more of a me thing, but you also are in the same boat. I'm having one playable outfield defender right now.
And it's not even Mateta specific in that sense, right? This is our first midweek fixture in a little while. So anybody could get rotated. A surprise rotation is very much so on the
It could be Saka. It could be, I mean, Minta doesn't have midweek, so he's going to play. It's probably somewhere with like most of the Tarkowskis, but it is something to be aware of with
anybody could be subbed,
with any of the teams with Europe.
Yeah, okay. All right. Lots to chew on with that. I think you make some really good points. I was thinking of it a lot more like in isolation, 1 week type of vibe. And you're right. I need to be thinking about it more long term. All right. Classic Two Nerds podcast.
Yeah, Data Boys pod.
Data Boys pod. All right. Well, we will catch you guys next time. Feel free to check this out before Game Week 14. And good luck to everybody out there. Catch you next time.
Guys, see you.